Boldwood presents Everything Changes But You, written by Sarah Bennett and read by Hannah Churchill. Chapter 1. Beep, beep, beep. Liam Penrose reached out without looking and cancelled the alarm on his phone. He hadn't needed it since he'd taken time off work to come and visit his family, but he was afraid to switch off. Afraid if he did, he'd never want to switch it on again. All those late nights and early mornings, all those weekend plans sacrificed to revise deadlines, all those steps he'd taken up the corporate ladder, and now, the thought of putting on a suit and setting foot in the shiny glass skyscraper with its views out over Canary Wharf gave him a vertigo attack. Recognising he'd been heading for burnout, Liam had arranged a sabbatical with his boss. He was supposed to be using the time off to rest and reconnect with his family. So much for that. It was like the moment he stopped working, his body had finally acknowledged how exhausted he was, but his brain had yet to get the message. He stared up at the ceiling with burning eyes and wondered what he was going to do to fill the next 16 hours before another night spent tossing and turning. He'd thought coming home would make him feel better, and it had, for a few hours, before his great-uncle had turned his life upside down. It had been a fortnight since his grandmother's birthday, 2 weeks since his great-uncle Davy had dropped an envelope in front of Liam containing the deeds to his seafront hotel and told him he could do what he wanted with the place. Liam felt like he'd barely slept a wink since then for worrying about what he was going to do. Correction, he knew what he wanted to do, but there was simply no way it was going to happen. Liam's future had been mapped out since the summer he'd turned 14, and his teacher, Ray Evans, had called round to see his parents, promising him the kind of future they'd never had. If his family thought for a minute he was contemplating chucking away a high-flying career in city finance to run a cheap and cheerful hotel, they'd be horrified and very disappointed. A brief knock sounded from the other side of his bedroom door. "Go away," he grumbled. "I'm sleeping." The door swung open with surprising force, the thump of it against his chest of drawers barely muffled by the dressing gown hanging on the back. "Good morning, sunshine." Liam's brother Rick marched into the room like he owned the place and plonked a mug of coffee on the bedside table, a furrow etched between his brows as he looked down at Liam. "You look like shit." "Gee, thanks." Bending at the waist, Rick sniffed at him like a dog before recoiling with an exaggerated gasp of horror. "Smell like it too, jeez. Liam, when was the last time you had a shower?" Liam scowled as he levered himself up into a sitting position with his back against the headboard. "Yesterday?" No. Yesterday, he'd spent the day slumped on the sofa watching rubbish on the TV in his brother's sitting room. Definitely over the weekend. It was hard to be sure as the days blurred into each other. Rick grabbed the mug he'd just set down and thrust it into Liam's hand. "Drink that." Without waiting for a reply, he crossed to the window and yanked open the curtains. Wincing as the sudden blast of sunshine hurt his bleary eyes, Liam raised his free hand to shield his face. A gust of cold air rudely followed the light as Rick unhooked one of the side windows and swung it wide. Liam had two choices: squint and freeze, or drop his hand to yank the quilt up over his bare chest. He chose the second. "Don't you have something better to do than give me a hard time?" It was hard to glare through eyes he'd narrowed to slits, but he gave it his best shot. "I do, actually, but I don't want to spend another day with Mum fretting over what's wrong with you, so you need to get a grip. We left you alone for the first few days because we assumed you just needed some time to catch up on your sleep and recharge a bit.
I should have spoken to you last week, but between the end of the summer holidays and the madness of the bank holiday weekend, I've barely had time to think about anything other than work.
As well as helping their mother run the chandler's shop on the quay, Rick also managed a successful water sports hire company. Features softening, Rick sank down on the end of the bed.
What's the matter, bro? Are you having second thoughts about splitting up with Caroline?
After struggling through several rocky months at the end of their almost 10-year relationship, Liam and his girlfriend had decided it was time to part ways, just before he'd arrived back home in Halfmoon Quay. He shook his head.
No, it was the right decision for both of us.
Not that he wasn't sad about it, but that wasn't the reason he was hiding away in his room avoiding everyone. He shot his brother a beseeching look.
Why did Uncle D choose me?
Some of the tension in his brother's shoulders relaxed.
My theory, for what it's worth, is that he decided on a clean break from the place. Giving it up can't be easy after so many years. I guess he figured the only way was to walk away from it.
Liam sipped at his coffee as he thought about that for a minute.
I suppose that makes sense. But that still doesn't answer why he picked me. It would make more sense if he'd chosen you or one of the twins, even. What would Harry do with it? You know that working at the restaurant is more than just a job for him. It's been his salvation. We can't let anything derail him again. And as for Ed, he wouldn't recognise a consequence if it jumped up and bit him in the arse. I thought losing that part-time job because he was banging his married boss might have been a wake-up call, but apparently not.
Liam closed his eyes.
I'd done my best to forget about that.
Rick sighed.
You know I adore him, but he's still got a lot of growing up to do. The hotel would go broke in 6 months if he was put in charge of it.
Yeah. Ed wouldn't mean to, but something would happen. And Rick was right about Harry too. Working at the restaurant wasn't simply a job. It was a vocation for him.
I don't know the first thing about running a hotel, and my life is in London. My work is in London.
Liam was good at his job, but it didn't make him feel anything. He'd miss the money, miss a few of the people he'd worked with. But at the end of the day, helping very rich people get even richer wasn't exactly a worthwhile endeavour. Still, it wasn't just about what he wanted.
I can't give all that up. What would everyone think?
Rick raised his eyebrows.
Since when did you care what everyone thinks?
Since always. Liam shifted uncomfortably against the headboard.
Come on. You know Mum and Dad sacrificed for me to get where I have. It'd be a slap in the face if I told them I wanted to chuck it all in.
And what would the rest of the family think if he didn't? The hotel had been in their family for several generations. Both his grandfather and his great-uncle had spoken more than once with immense pride about how their ancestors had worked their way up from fishermen, risking their lives every day just to make ends meet, to having a building in the village that bore their name. It was a landmark, a physical representation of all the hard work of those who had come before him. His stomach twisted. He was damned if he did, and damned if he didn't.
Is that what's got you so stressed out? Because I don't think Mum and Dad would see it like that. All they've ever wanted was the best for you, for all four of us. If you're not happy in London, then talk to them about it.
It's not that I'm not happy. Rick burst out laughing.
Have you looked in the mirror lately? If you're having such a great time, why are you homeless, girlfriendless, and seemingly still exhausted after spending the last 2 weeks sat on your arse?
I already told you that Caro and I
simply ran our course, and the flat belonged to her folks, so of course I was the one who was going to move out. Finding somewhere else to rent won't be a problem.
The lie of that sat heavy on his shoulders. Unless he was willing to flat share, he'd have to look for a place much further out of the centre of the city, which would mean a longer commute. The thought of spending extra time crammed cheek by jowl with strangers on the tube was enough to make sweat break out on his brow. He took a quick sip of his coffee and did his best to wipe his glistening face without making it too obvious what he was doing.
And the endless late nights and weekend working, that didn't take its toll on your relationship?
Rick shook his head.
I wasn't kidding earlier when I said you look like shit, Liam. The dark circles around your eyes wouldn't look out of place on a bloody panda.
I'm just a bit knackered because I haven't had any time off since last Christmas. Truth be told, he'd worked through most of that holiday too, as his company had tried to work out if they were going to buy in on a new IPO launch to the stock market of a tech startup company.
That's why I'm on extended leave. I'll be fine once I recharge my batteries a bit.
Assuming he ever managed to get a decent night's sleep.
This stuff with the hotel, it's just an extra stress I could do without right now.
Rick folded his arms across his chest.
If you want the best of both worlds, you could get a manager in to run the hotel on your behalf.
You mean Anya? Liam took another quick sip of his coffee and eyed his brother over the rim of his mug. How are things between you two, by the way?
Ha! Rick barked out a laugh. Nice try, but we're not talking about me, we're talking about you. And no, I didn't mean Anya. She's happy to hold the fort while you sort things out, but don't be making any long-term plans for her. Not unless you want to deal with Chloe.
It was Liam's turn to laugh. No, thank you. Their cousin Chloe was as sweet as sugar until you crossed her, and then it was every man for himself. Growing up with an older brother and 4 male cousins, Chloe had learned that the only way to win was to fight dirty, and she was very good at it. Rick grinned.
Good choice. She's serious about this new design venture with Anya. Man, you should see the stuff on their website. I knew Anya had an eye for design, but some of the room design sketches Chloe has put up there are breathtaking.
There was no mistaking the pride in his voice. Then I'm happy for them. Setting down his mostly empty mug, Liam sighed.
Doesn't help me, though. If Anya's heart is set on leaving the hotel, that leaves me in an even bigger mess. His brother's expression grew serious. You don't have to accept it, you know. Nothing's gone through on paper. So you can hand those deeds back to Uncle D, head back to London, and pick up where you left off.
Liam knew it was true. Knew it was the easiest solution to his unexpected dilemma. Hand the deeds back, get a week or 2 of decent rest under his belt, and get back to London. His boss would certainly be happy about it. Although he'd agreed to Liam taking a sabbatical until the end of October, not having him around was an extra burden on the team. They'd all been supportive about Liam's request and encouraged him to take a break. No doubt, his colleagues had envisioned Liam sunning himself on the beach, chilling out with his family and recharging his batteries before returning fresh and ready to plunge headlong into another complicated project. Moping around was doing them a disservice too. Liam needed to get a grip and stop wasting this precious time he'd been given. Washing his hands of the hotel certainly made the most sense. Once he did that, maybe he'd be able to relax and enjoy himself. And yet, Uncle D's got enough on his plate.
Is that why you haven't spoken to him yet?
Unfolding his arms, Rick placed a comforting hand on Liam's ankle through the covers.
Hey, don't you dare let Davy's illness guilt you into doing something you don't want to do.
It's not that. Liam quirked a wry smile. Well, not only that. If he upped and walked away, then it would fall to Rick and the rest of the family to pick up the pieces. That or sell it to someone who wouldn't understand the history that ran through every brick.
The hotel is part of this family. This village is a part of this family, and I feel like I need to honour that.
He scrubbed at the ache in his forehead.
I just wish I knew the first thing about running a hotel.
The financial side of the business wouldn't be an issue, because numbers always made sense to Liam. But the rest of it? Dealing with people all day, every day? That was so far out of his comfort zone, he wouldn't know where to start.
I'm not exactly a people person. And Uncle D is. Come on, Liam. I know a piss-weak excuse when I hear one.
Liam laughed.
I can always rely on you to be honest, bro.
Rick patted his leg again.
Any time. And here's my last bit of honesty. If you take on the hotel, it has to be because you want to, not because you feel some kind of obligation, and definitely not because you are trying to second-guess what everyone expects you to do.
Yeah, you're right. Still, it was easier said than done.
I'll give it some serious thought. Thanks. You've helped a lot. That's what I'm here for. So what's on your schedule for today?
He wrinkled his nose.
Other than a shower.
Liam yanked a pillow from behind him and tossed it at his brother's head. Didn't anyone ever tell you not to cheek your elders? Rick caught the pillow and dropped it to the floor.
Not that I can recall.
He pointed towards the sunshine streaming through the window.
It's a gorgeous day. At least promise me you'll get out for some fresh air. If you need to borrow some gym kit,
my trainers are in there somewhere. Liam nodded towards the pair of suitcases stacked in the corner of the room.
Rick stood. Then I suggest you dig them out and get out for a run. It usually works for me.
He took a few steps towards the door, then paused.
Might help you sleep better too.
Yes, Dad. Though he said it in a sing-song sarcastic voice, it was enough of a prompt to get him moving. Liam tossed back his covers and crossed the room to crouch in front of his cases. He unzipped the first one and began rummaging through the current contents of his life. Sensing Rick still there, he glanced over his shoulder. Go and find someone else to annoy already. He made a shooing motion.
Okay, I'm going. Hey, do you reckon you'd have time to help me out later?
Liam raised an eyebrow. I'll have to check my busy schedule, but I might be able to squeeze you in. They exchanged a grin. What do you need?
It's the monthly community meeting at the hub this evening, and I could do with a hand setting things up. There's a pint in it for you at the Smugglers afterwards.
You don't need to bribe me to help you, so that pint will be on me. His brother would need a drink after letting everyone bend his ear for a couple of hours. Rick had a deeply seated drive to help whoever and wherever he could. Liam greatly admired his brother's dedication to the community, but was happy to leave the hard work to him. Perhaps, if he'd had more of a tie to the village, he'd understand it, but Halfmoon Quay hadn't been his home for a long time, and Liam didn't know if it was too late to change that. Maybe this was the perfect time to try and find out. Chapter 2. What a beautiful day. Issy Kernow tilted her face upwards, closing her eyes against the sun's bright rays as she let the warmth of it soak into her skin. Days like this, there was nowhere she'd rather be. A familiar sadness threatened to settle over her, but she slowed her breathing and turned her focus inward, counting, pausing, grounding herself in the here and now until the tugging fingers of sorrow eased their grip on her heart. The grief never left her, not completely, but she would not let it spoil her day. Opening her eyes, Issy tucked a couple of stray bits of hair behind her ears. Though she loved her poker-straight black hair, its natural silkiness meant it was forever escaping the clips and bands she used to hold it back. It would be more practical to chop it all off, but her mum had always loved styling it, and some of Issy's most precious memories were sitting on her bed at night as her mum brushed it smooth before she went to sleep. Issy raised her coffee to her lips and took a long, deep swallow. The bitter sweetness of it perfectly matched those memories. Working all day in a café might make some people sick of coffee, but not Issy. She loved everything about it, from the way it heightened her senses to the rich aroma that always smelled like a warm welcome, not to mention the kick of energy from the caffeine that helped her get through even the busiest of days. "Skiving off," a familiar deep voice called from across the road. She glanced up and grinned at Harry Penrose, who was standing watching her, arms folded across his chest. Tall and dark, most women would consider him extremely handsome. But Issy had known Harry all her life and considered him more of an annoying little brother. Something like that. She'd actually been on her feet since before 6, and this was the first chance she'd had to take a break. Normally, she would have stayed inside and putted about, because there was always something that needed her attention, but the sunshine had been too tempting. Besides, she was her own boss, so if she wanted to take 5 minutes to sit on the sea wall, it was nobody's business but her own. "You want a drink?" Harry shook his head. I'm good. I need to open up and get morning prep started." He checked the large metallic watch on his wrist. "Give me an hour and I'll be ready for an extra large double shot, though." "I'll be waiting whenever you're ready," Issy promised. "Oh, and I baked chocolate and walnut brownies this morning." And there was me watching my waistline. Harry patted his admirably flat stomach. "Make sure you save me one. See you in a bit, Issy." With a wave, Harry turned towards the restaurant where he was second in command to Russ Armstrong, one of the county's premier chefs, and unlocked the front door. Issy finished her coffee and forced herself to move. Much as she'd like to sit there a few more minutes and soak up the sun, she'd had her own prep to do before the lunchtime rush and the afternoon madness of the summer's kids' club she ran in the community hub extension to the café. Thank God school started next week and her days would settle into an easier pattern, an ebb and flow of peaks and troughs that followed the rhythm of the work and school days of the residents of the village. Although the kids' club was primarily intended to support local families, it hadn't taken long for holidaymakers to find out about it, and while she appreciated the extra revenue she earned because everyone wanted drinks and snacks, Issy was definitely counting down the days now. As she walked back into the cafe, her eyes moved automatically to the clock and then towards the window. She wasn't the only one in the village with a regular schedule. Ray Evans, her old secondary school teacher, walked past carrying a bouquet of yellow roses on his weekly visit to the neat little cemetery in the grounds of St. Peter's Church. Issy tapped on the window and raised her hand when he glanced her way. Ray raised his hat, returning her greeting, but didn't stop. He'd be in at 3:15 for his afternoon coffee, just like clockwork. Issy was about to head behind the counter when another figure came into view. Tall, dark, and oh God, why was he so bloody handsome? Liam Penrose was a lot to take, even when he was fully dressed. Clad only in a pair of black lycra shorts and a white t-shirt, already turning transparent from his sweaty exertions, he was something else entirely. As though sensing someone watching him, Liam glanced around mid-stride. Cheeks flaming, Issy spun on her heel and marched back behind the counter, cursing softly under her breath. She could not get caught ogling that arse, nor the rest of him for that matter. Liam didn't deserve anything from her, not after the way he'd treated her. A loud knock on the window made her jump, and she glanced over to find Liam waving his water bottle back and forth. She narrowed her eyes and pointed towards the water tap she'd had installed outside by the front door. Sure, she'd had it fitted so people could fill bowls for their dogs, but it was fit for human consumption, unfortunately. She amused herself with the thought of Liam on the wrong end of a bout of E. coli poisoning. Nothing too bad, of course, just 48 hours of groaning misery, 72, tops. The bell above the door rang, and there he was in all his glistening glory. He really was determined to wreck her good mood. "There's a tap outside." Liam frowned. "The dog tap?" "It's not just for dogs, it's connected to the main supply." Liam folded his arms across his chest, making the muscles in his upper arms bulge in a very alarming manner. "There's literally a picture of a dog above the tap, and a sign that says, 'Dog tap.'" When had he got so ripped? He must have a gym membership back home or something, because there was no way he'd got biceps like that just from running. No. Thoughts of Liam pumping iron were not happening. "Fine." When he took a step forward, she waved him back as she hurried around the counter. "No, stay there on the mat. I don't want you sweating everywhere." "Are you this nice to all your customers? Or did I do something to warrant special treatment?" The sarcasm dripped off him, but he did, at least, move back until he was standing on the large mat in front of the door. "Oh no, this is just for you." Issy stopped in front of him and held out her hand. When he didn't do anything other than stare at her, she gestured impatiently. "Do you want me to fill your water bottle or not?" "I'm not so sure. What are you going to put in it? Poison?" Issy rolled her eyes. "Don't flatter yourself that you're worth the jail time. Now give it here or go away." Liam extended the bottle, but when she took it, he didn't release it at first. "I wish I knew what I'd done to make you hate me." This close, she could see how dark the circles were under his eyes. Beneath the sheen of sweat, his hair looked lank and greasy. He might have muscles to make Captain America do a double take, but Liam hadn't been looking after himself lately. He looked pale and, she realised indignantly, there was a glitter of hurt in his dark gaze. How dare he give her sad puppy eyes? And as for looking pale, well, that was perfect for someone who was an expert in ghosting people. "If you don't know, I can't help you." She tugged at the water bottle, annoyed when he didn't release it. "Stop messing around, I haven't got all day." "Forget it. I'll take my chances with the dog tap." Yanking the bottle out of her grip, he turned on his heel and marched out to shove his bottle under the external tap. Issy's feet moved without her awareness until she found herself standing on the threshold, watching him. From the set of his shoulders and the muscle twitching in his jaw, his body language radiated anger. Once he'd finished, he straightened up and glared at her. "I don't know where all this hostility has come from, Issy. If anyone has the right to be pissed off here, it's me, after the way you treated me. Do us both a favour and get over yourself, okay?" He jogged away before she had time to pick her jaw up off the floor. Of all the nerve! She grabbed the edge of the door, intending to slam it. But what would be the point when Liam was already long gone? She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Why on earth had she let him get under her skin like that? They'd been inseparable when they were younger, been boyfriend and girlfriend since the playground, when neither of them had understood what those words meant, beyond playing together and holding hands. They'd told each other everything, shared secrets, made promises, trusted each other with their hopes and dreams. And hearts. Things changed after Liam was awarded a scholarship to private school for the start of Year 9. The night before he'd left, he'd sobbed on her shoulder and she'd clung to him as they'd both sworn it wouldn't make a difference. His first summer home, they'd done their best to make up for the time they'd lost, spending every waking moment together. But it hadn't been the same, not for Liam, at least. Just a few weeks after he'd gone back to school, he'd simply stopped writing to her.
The following summer had been dreadful. Liam had barely acknowledged her, and she'd certainly been in no hurry to speak to him. A knock on the outside of the door shook Issy out of her reverie. Blinking away, the tears stinging the backs of her eyes, she forced a smile and opened the door. "Sorry, Betty. I was wool gathering. Large pot of tea?" Stepping back, she ushered the woman inside. Arthritis had slowed her steps, but with the help of her wheeled walker, Betty maintained enough independence to keep active. "That would be lovely, dear. I'm absolutely parched." She turned her back and let Issy help her out of the beige coat she always wore, come rain or shine. Issy hung it on the rack by the door and offered Betty her arm, settling her at a table where she could enjoy a view out over the ocean. While Betty untied the silk scarf from around her neck, Issy took her walker and parked it by the coat rack. "I'll be right back with your tea. I've got some chocolate and walnut brownies if I can tempt you with something a little naughty." Betty's eyes lit up. "Oh, goodness, that sounds heavenly. Just this once, though, and only a very small piece." "Of course." Issy hid her smile until she turned away. It was a part of their routine. Betty would order only tea, and Issy would tempt her into something delicious, never more than a mouthful or two. But if one couldn't indulge a bit now and again, especially at Betty's age, then honestly, what was the point? Issy was a firm believer in enjoying the good things in life, and she had the curves to prove it. But running the café kept her fit enough, though you'd never catch her out jogging. As she potted in the kitchen of the business that she had worked so hard to build into something special, Issy's irritation faded. It had been foolish to behave as she had towards Liam. He wasn't worth her anger, and she should be well past the point of him being able to hurt her. If she had the misfortune to run into him again, she'd treat him as she would any other customer. With any luck, he'd be on his way back to London before that happened, and she could go back to forgetting he even existed. A shrill scream echoed around the cafe later that afternoon, drilling its way into Issy's skull and giving her an instant headache. She closed her eyes for a moment, wondering if the noise and chaos around her might vanish if she wished hard enough. The noise continued, and she sighed. Her fairy godmother was ignoring her, apparently. Issy took a deep breath and reminded herself she'd missed the extra revenue when the kids' club ended. From some of the slightly glazed expressions on the parents sucking in caffeine like their lives depended on it, Issy wasn't the only one who'd be relieved when the school term started again. The hub would still host the kids' club, but only for a couple of afternoons a week, and the village school was fairly small, so the numbers were more manageable. She checked her watch, nearly closing time. If she played her cards right, she could get everyone out, finish her clean down, and be upstairs and soaking in the tub within an hour. "It's nearly 5, folks," she called out as she started walking around the tables and gathering empty cups and plates. "Time to make a move." The customers sitting nearest acknowledged her request and began gathering their things. Toys and books were scattered everywhere. The large table at the back where she put out jugs of water and the on-their-last-legs bit of fruit from Mike Lawton donated from his greengrocer shop was a disaster zone. A couple of the parents were making an attempt to tidy things up, but it would be quicker and easier to tackle the browning apple cores, abandoned bits of orange rind, and knocked-over plastic cups once everyone had gone. Issy touched her hand to the nearest mother's arm. "Don't worry about that. I'll sort it," she assured the woman with a smile. Unfortunately, some of the other parents seemed more intent on finishing their conversations than rounding up their children. Issy clapped her hands together. "It's nearly 5 o'clock, she announced again, pitching her voice louder this time. "Come on, everyone. I need to close up now." As she'd hoped, the second announcement spurred those lingering into action. Issy weaved between the tables,
chivying people along with a smile and an encouraging word, gathering dirty dishes until she had a stack she could barely see over. The bell over the door rang. "Sorry, we're closed." She trailed off at the sight of Liam, filling the doorway for the second time that day. He'd had a shower and changed out of his gym gear into a pair of black jeans and a red t-shirt that clung to his body. It was so tight she wondered if he'd been shopping in the boys' section. "What do you want now?" she snapped, forgetting all about her vow to herself to treat him like anyone else. "Nothing from you." His tone matched her own sharpness, and honestly, she wasn't sure she could blame him. "Rick asked me to meet him here to help him set up for some community meeting." Issy felt her insides lurch, and it wasn't that confusing, annoying sensation that being in the near vicinity of this man always seemed to generate. With a heavy heart, she turned to stare at the blackboard of events on the wall, then back at Liam. "It's the last Tuesday of the month." She couldn't help the disappointment creeping into her tone. Things had been so full on with the bank holiday weekend, it had completely slipped her mind. He nodded. "Yup." Issy's dream of a long hot bath and an early night with her Kindle vanished into thin air. Well, shit. Liam laughed, and some of the tension in his shoulders eased. "Sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings." She huffed out a long breath, then straightened her shoulders. Nothing she could do other than make the best of it. "It's not your fault. I just completely lost track of what the date was. Give me a few minutes to tidy up in the hub, and then you can get started with setting up." By which time, hopefully, Rick would be here and he could take over. She hurried back behind the counter to dump the stack of dishes, then grabbed the cleaning spray and a cloth, all but bumping into Liam, who had apparently followed her. "What can I do to help?" he asked. "Go away and leave me alone." She swallowed the words down. Sniping at him wasn't going to make things go any quicker. She couldn't bring herself to smile at him, but she could find it in herself to at least be polite. She held out the spray and cloth to him. "If I clear off the tables, do you mind wiping them down afterwards?" "Sure." He took the items and walked away. She kept an eye on him at the first table, expecting a quick squirt and a swipe of the cloth. But he was diligent with his efforts, and she had to admit that, as much as she'd rather he wasn't there, it was a lot quicker than doing it all herself. They reached the last occupied table where Ray Evans was still nursing a half-drunk cappuccino. "Haven't you got a home to go to?" she said with a teasing smile as she reached out and gently took the mug from him. The moment the words were out, she wished them back. Ray didn't have a home as such. He was one of the few permanent boarders at the Penrose House Hotel on the seafront. Her grandmother had moved in there about 3 years ago, much against Issy's wishes, claiming they both needed their own space. Given how things had recently developed between Maud and Davy, Issy was beginning to suspect her grandmother had been playing the long game. Ray was a more recent addition, having sold his cottage in the village after his wife died last year, and it was now one of many rented out to summer visitors. Not looking at her, Ray sent a challenging glance towards Liam. "I don't know. Have I?" Liam frowned. "Have you what, Ray?" "Got a home." Liam set the cloth and the spray down, looking confused. "What do you mean?" Ray scoffed, an impatient, angry sound. "Word on the street is that you own the hotel now. Not that your great-uncle has had the courtesy to speak to me about it. You'd think, as I live there, he'd at least have had the good grace to mention it to me." Liam shuffled his feet, looking so uncomfortable Issy almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I had no idea you were living there. Things with the hotel are still a bit up in the air." Issy raised her eyebrows at him. "What do you mean, you had no idea? You know my grandmother lives there as well." She assumed that Maud was in on Davy's plans at least, given they'd taken up with each other. Issy still couldn't understand what Maud was doing messing around with a man at her age. Issy wasn't yet 30 and she could hardly be bothered with the idea of a boyfriend. Liam shook his head, looking completely bewildered.
I swear I had no idea. I haven't been around much and I never paid any attention to what my uncle was doing. I still have no idea why he gave me the deeds in the first place. He's making mischief. That's what he's doing, Ray snapped. Best thing you can do is give them back to him and tell him not to be so bloody stupid. You've got better things to do with your life than worry about a run-down old dump. You can't possibly think you can manage the place from London. Speaking of which, shouldn't you be getting back there? I'm on a sabbatical until the end of October, actually.
Liam took a step back, clearly surprised by the older man's ire. End of October? Liam might be around for another 2 months. The mug slipped from Issy's nerveless fingers to shatter on the floor, sending cold coffee and shards of china in all directions. Damn! She crouched and began to gather the pieces, flinching when she cut her finger on a sharp edge. Damn! She said again, as a bright spot of blood welled into the small wound.
You okay? Here, let me look at that.
Liam was far too close for comfort, and before Issy knew what was happening, he'd taken her hand and pulled it towards him. He'd produced a snowy white handkerchief from somewhere and was dabbing gently at the cut. This close, she could smell whatever shower gel he'd used, something fresh and sharp with a hint of citrus. Her head went all swimmy for a moment, and it wasn't from the loss of blood. She yanked her hand back. It's fine. Dark blue eyes met hers, and there was that hurt she'd recognised earlier, almost hidden by a clear frustration. She swallowed hard. I mean, thanks for checking, but it's okay. I'll go and run it under the tap and put on a plaster. She scrambled up. I need to get a dustpan and a mop to clear this up anyway. Liam had followed her up and all but loomed over her.
I can get those if you tell me where they are. You go and sort your finger out.
The bell over the door rang, automatically drawing her attention. When she saw who it was, she could have cried with relief. It's fine, she repeated. Look, Rick's here, and he'll need your help sorting out the hub for the meeting. The way Liam narrowed his eyes at her, she could tell he recognised a dismissal when he heard one. But he moved away without a word, thank goodness. She lifted the handkerchief he'd wrapped around her finger and was pleased to see the cut had all but stopped bleeding and wouldn't be an issue. The same couldn't be said for the mess on the floor, or the state of her trainers and jeans, which were both covered in dark splashes. She glanced to where Ray was sitting. Sorry about that. Did I get any on you? He shook his head as he stood.
Nope, but I'll get out of your way so you can clean up.
Thanks. Sorry again for the mess.
Accidents happen.
Ray took a step away, then turned back.
I think you should have a word with him about this hotel nonsense.
Who? Liam? Ray nodded.
We both know the best thing for him is to not accept those deeds. Don't you go putting any foolish ideas into his head about giving up everything he's worked so hard for.
I'm not sure I appreciate your tone, Ray. Her former teacher might be reserved, but he'd never been anything less than polite before. And I can assure you, I won't be putting any ideas into Liam's head, foolish or otherwise. What he chooses to do is none of my business. Chapter 3. Liam clenched his fists as he stormed towards the front door. He had no idea why Issy was treating him like something nasty she'd stepped in, but he was sick of it. It had been 15 years since she dumped him without a word of explanation when he'd needed her support the most. And yet, He could find it in himself to be civilized, so why couldn't she?
"You all right, bro?" Rick asked as Liam marched up to him. "You look like you're ready to fight the world."
He glanced over Liam's shoulder, then quickly back at him with a more focused gaze.
"What's going on?"
"Oh, Izzy's doing my head in, that's all." Liam closed his eyes for a second and drew in a deep breath. He didn't like being angry, didn't like feeling out of control, full stop. With an effort, he pushed the irritation away. Whatever Izzy's problem was, it was exactly that, her problem. He opened his eyes.
"It's nothing. Forget about it." "Have you two been fighting? That doesn't sound like Izzy at all. Do you want me to talk to her?"
"No." Liam huffed out a breath and moderated his tone.
"Can you please just stop trying to fix everything all the damn time? Let's sort the hub out so I can get out of here."
Rick opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but closed it again when Liam gave him the "don't push it" look.
"Sure, it shouldn't take long."
As they worked to tidy up the mess from the kids' club and set the chairs out, Liam decided to change the subject.
"Hey, did you know Ray lived at the hotel?"
Rick paused in the act of unstacking chairs and glanced over at him.
"Yeah? There's a couple of permanent residents, and he's one of them. Have you been talking to Davy about the hotel, then?" "No, not yet. Ray was in here just now, and he all but bit my head off about it. Told me I should be back in London. Not that it's any of his bloody business what I do."
Ray had played a big part in Liam getting to where he was today by arranging a scholarship for him at a private school his parents could never have afforded in a million years. It had done wonders for Liam's education and career prospects, but it had also torn him away from everything that mattered to him, including Izzy. His feelings towards his former teacher were ambivalent at best.
"Bloody Davy. I could wring his scrawny old neck for dumping all this on me."
Rick clapped a sympathetic hand on his shoulder.
"You don't have to accept, remember? As I said this morning, you're not beholden to anyone. If you want to go back to London, then do it, and I'll back you all the way."
For a second, he was truly tempted. If he went home, he'd be away from all this aggro and stress. Only, he didn't have a home there anymore. So he'd just be walking away from one mess and straight into another one. Liam sighed.
"Yeah. Look, can we talk about this later? Go through the pros and cons and stuff?" "Of course we can. And I'll talk to Uncle D with you as well, if you like. I'm used to that old hustler and his ways."
His mouth quirked at the corner.
"Better yet, you should take Anya with you. She doesn't let him get away with anything."
Liam smiled. It was one thing to tell Rick to stop trying to help. It was another thing to expect him to actually listen.
"How is she?"
Rick raised an eyebrow.
"Are you trying to change the subject again?"
Liam held his hands up.
"No, we've already agreed to talk through the hotel stuff later. I'm not sure what I want to do, but bolting back to London isn't the answer. I wasn't in a good place when I came home, and not just because of breaking up with Caro. Work has been full on, and the thought of going back..."
He shook his head.
"There's a lot I need to figure out, but this isn't the time and place. Plus, what you said this morning about worrying Mum really got to me. I've been letting things overwhelm me and ignoring you all in the process. I genuinely want to know how things are with you guys. Your happiness means a lot to me, Rick."
His brother smiled.
"Anya's good. We're just keeping it friends for now. Are you okay with that?"
It couldn't be easy for Rick, who'd been more than half in love with Anya since they were kids. She'd married someone else, a lying bastard who'd left her and their little girl Freya up to their eyes in debt when he died in a car accident a couple of years ago. Finally admitting she had nowhere else to go, Anya had moved to Halfmoon Quay earlier in the year for a fresh start. For a while, that start had seemed like it was going to include Rick, but things appeared to have cooled a little between them. Rick gave Liam a wry, knowing smile.
I'm doing my best to be okay with it, but things haven't ended between us. They're just on hold for now. My knight in shining armour dreams have taken a bit of a battering, but Anya is determined to get back on her own 2 feet without my help. Your interference, more like.
Liam adored his brother, but Rick wasn't kidding about having a bit of a hero complex. Rick grinned.
My helpful interference? It's doing my head in a bit having to take a step back, but I'm so proud of the resilience she's showing. Anya knows I'll wait for her to be ready, and most importantly, she wants me to wait for her to be ready.
Liam was pleased for Rick, but he hoped Anya wouldn't keep him waiting too long. His brother had so much love inside him, and it was good that he'd found someone to share that with, someone Liam hoped would be able to love him the way he deserved in return. I'll be rooting for you guys. It didn't take them long to finish setting things up. Liam straightened the final chair he'd set out and turned